Hello YouTube, Mr. Mags here. Today I will be asking the question, what if the Sinnoh region had brand new gym leaders? Now I personally believe that the Sinnoh region has some of the best gym leader teams across the entire franchise. I think they are all very appropriately challenging for where they are in the region. I think they have a good balance of new and old Pokemon, and I think they just generally represent the region as a whole very well. So I figured today I would take a crack at making my own gym leaders and hope I can make some that are at least almost as good as what's currently there. So let's start off with the criteria for how I develop these teams. First, I'll have no repeat types of current Sinnoh gym leaders. So no ghost, rock, water, etc. Teams are created independent of any canon teams or previous teams in this series of videos. For example, if I made a normal team and felt that it made sense for Perugly to be on that team, I'm not going to say, oh, it can't have Perugly because Mars does have Perugly. I'll either I'm going to say this is either a, alternate reality where Mars doesn't have a Perugly, or she just, does have one and it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to ban certain Pokemon just because canon trainers have them. And as far as the previous teams in the series, there might be certain decisions I made that were like subconsciously made due to already using certain Pokemon, but once again, I'm not banning a Pokemon just because it is used somewhere else. Now, for the rematch teams, I switched up the criteria ever so slightly this time. Um, all possible regional forms, including Hisuian forms, and all post-Gen 4 regional evolutions are only allowed for rematches. There's a lot to take in there. Let me just break it down. In the past, I did allow regional variants to kind of fill holes in previous videos, like for example, Marowak on the Ghost team in Kanto, since there weren't that many ghost types, I basically had to use all of Marowak there. But in this instance, since I felt there was enough Pokemon to pull from, I didn't need regional variants in the base teams. But in rematch teams, stuff like uh stuff like Galarian Rapidash, Alolan Golem, Alolan Raichu, etc., that kind of thing can be used. And I'm also going to be including any Hisuian forms in there as well, since Hisui was technically, you know, ancient Sinnoh, I think it's more than fair to allow stuff like Basculegion, Ursaluna, even like Braviary, like Hisui and Braviary, that kind of thing. Even though they are, post-gen Pokemon, I think it makes sense for them to be here as well. And kind of in a similar vein, stuff like Clodsire, if I, since Wooper is in Sinnoh, for a giraffe, like anything that is an evolution of a Pokemon that is found in Sinnoh, but that evolution doesn't show up until a later generation, I'm allowing those for rematches. Hope that all made sense. And kind of in a similar vein, all Pokemon from Gens 1 through 4 are allowed, but Pokemon species found in Sinnoh are prioritized. So, for example, there aren't that many fairy type Pokemon in Sinnoh. So if I did make a fairy type gym leader, I'm allowing stuff like Grand Bull and some other fairy types that aren't found in Sinnoh to be used in the rematch team. But if I were to make a new water team, I'm not gonna have pull, stuff like Blastoise or any like previous gen water types, since there are plenty of water types to pull from in this region. It is assumed that the story follows a similar but slightly modified path to the canon Sinnoh games. I kind of alluded to this up front, where the basic story will be, largely the same, but certain characters might be switched around. The gym leaders for serve will be switched around. If there's ever a Pokemon that shows up on a gym leader team that is the ace on a team of an actual canon trainer, just assume that that trainer has a different team, or it just doesn't, really matter. But generally, I will kind of point those out as we go, and as well as any other minor changes to routing or significant trainers you fight in between gyms. I'll mention them as we go. And lastly, the gym leader's overall strength will be based on the canon gym leaders in Sinnoh, if not slightly stronger. I try to keep the average base stat total of the gym leader uh, similar to the position of where they were in the original Sinnoh games. I might have upped the levels a little bit. I might have added a Pokemon here or there, but generally speaking, I tried to keep, especially the ace Pokemon, of a similar tier of strength to how they actually are in Platinum specifically. All right, let's get right into the first gym leader being a normal gym leader. And just like with my Hoenn video, I am going to try to utilize as many of the Battle Frontier brains as possible in here since I completely forgot about them in my gym leader, I'm sorry, in my Elite Four, new Elite Four video. So since Palmer very famously used the Regigigas in one of his Frontier brain fights, I think it's only fair to bring him in for the normal gym leader here. And his team consists of a Baniri at 13, Ambipom, that's right, just Apom, not quite Ambipom yet, Apom at level 12, and then B Barrel at level 15. This is up one level from where Rourke is, and I wanted to be level 15 so that he can have B Barrel. And I liked B Barrel here since ideally you might think, oh, Monferno, it evolves at level 14 and then immediately learns Mach Punch and can potentially just wipe through a standard normal team. But with B Barrel being part water, it is kind of a check to Monferno. You probably won't be able to one-shot it with a single Mach Punch, and then it can respond with either Aqua Jet or Water Gun and do some damage back. Uh, so yeah, I just really like the idea of B Barrel, which yes, it is the fully evolved first root, rodent Pokemon, but I still think that it makes for a decent ace this early on. Next, we have the second gym, which is the bug type gym, and I put Aaron from the Elite Four member here. Like I said up front, I'm not allowing any of the gym leader types, but I am doing any that were Elite Four members can still be gym leaders here. And since Aaron was an Elite Four member, might as well make him a gym leader now. And we have Mothim and Sandy Form Wormadam at level 23, and then Vespiquen at 25. I put Mothim and Wormadam both at 23 just to guarantee they can know the move Confusion, since they learned that at 23, at least in modern games, and I wanted them to have that just for more extra type variety. And then I felt Vespiquen kind of similarly to B Barrel. It's a lot bulkier than you might think it is. It has just a lot going on. It can use all the order moves to heal itself, to boost its defense, and then use Toxic. I think it even learns Power Gem as a level up, sorry, as an evolution move on top of whatever TM that he'll give up, probably Struggle Bug or something like that. So I think Vespiquen, especially this early on, could make for a pretty significant roadblock. The only thing is that Vespiquen, being a bug flying type, is weak to a lot of things. Rock, fire, ice. There's just a lot of very very common things that bug and flying are weak to that you'll have access to early on. So I don't think having it be a Vespiquen at level 25 would be too crazy, especially since there was a lot of the region you have to get through between the first and second gym. You have to go up through Floroma Town. You have to, you battle, uh, Commander Mars, whatever team she has. You have everything in Eterna Forest. I think there, especially if you include a few extra mandatory fights in Eterna Forest, along with Cheryl, I think is her name, the person you're companion through there. I think 25 wouldn't be too crazy. Next, we have Bertha, the ground gym leader. And she starts off with Hippopotas at 26, Gabite at 25, and Gliscor at 28. I think going up only three levels is fine here. There's not a whole lot that happens in between the two gyms, at least in the base Pokemon games, or it's in Platinum specifically. You do fight Jupiter, who might be one or two levels higher than Air, probably level 26. And then You basically just go down Cycling Road. You do have that little area below Cycling Road, but it's not mandatory. In an ideal world, maybe you make the stuff in Wayward Cave with that girl with the cadaver I can never remember the name of. Um, you make that mandatory, but I don't really think that's necessary. And then ideally, I think it'd be kind of cool to have at least one fight against Dawn somewhere in the games, considering at that point in the story, she does give you both the dowsing machine and the VS Seeker, I'm pretty sure. Like at least one of them. I'm pretty sure both, but at least one of those at that point before you go to Mount Cornet and then out the other side into Hardhome. So I think it'd be kind of cool if you do fight Dawn there. But regardless, I don't think her being level or Bertha being level 28 would be too crazy, especially considering just how well this team synergizes. Hippopotas setting up the sand and then being, relatively weak, so it's going to go down, in one or two hits. And that leaves, assuming modern mechanics, the sand being up for, at least 2 to 3 more turns. So that both Gabite and Gliscor can utilize their sand availabilities. And like, yeah, I think that could be like a major roadblock, especially at that point in the game. Like ice type moves, like you might be able to get something, especially if there's a trade Pokemon somewhere. Um, but even water type moves or grass moves aren't really going to be able to hurt the Gabite super hard. Grass isn't really going to be good against Gliscor, but obviously water would. Um, yeah, I think 28 is about as high as that can go while still being possible that early on, especially like I said, when there's sandstorm shenanigans going on as well. Next up, with the fourth gym, we have the Flying Gym with Argenta here, who is another one of the battle facility brains in Platinum. And she's one of those people that doesn't have a set team, but she can kind of use like a variety of Pokemon. But I really do feel like her whole vibe just kind of screams flying. To me, I can't really explain why. Just those glasses could very easily be aviator goggles with like a wind jacket. It feels, it just feels like flying. I don't know, just kind of get that vibe from her. So we're gonna go up a few more levels here with Drifblim at 32, Mantine at 30, who does evolve from a Sinnoh Pokemon in Mantike, so I wanted to spotlight that here, and then Staraptor at its evolution level of 34. So typically I like to go up about 4 levels between gym leaders. I know I went up only 3 between 2 and 3, but I think I justified that well enough. But here we're going up 6 levels. And I think kind of in my head, I think it'd be kind of cool if this fight you're actually forced to have the fourth gym leader be in Pastoria. So you exit Hardhome, you fight your rival, you go up all the way to Veilstone, but once you get to Veilstone, Looker or someone tells you that, oh, the gym leader isn't here right now. Maybe there's some little Team Galactic like little subplot up there. And then, Looker tells you, in the meantime, go down to Pastoria. There's another gym down there. So you go all the way down that route to Pastoria, and then you fight the fourth gym here at 34. I don't think that'll be too crazy. The fourth gym in Platinum is 32, so going up just a couple levels. I don't think that's too crazy, especially with only 3 Pokemon. I think that's fine. But the reason why I specifically wanted this to be at 34 in Pastoria is because I think it'd be really cool if the fifth gym leader were a poison gym leader and that gym leader being Saturn in Veilstone, where the galactic corporate headquarters is. So on Saturn's team, we go up 4 more levels. There's is a another fight with Barry, at least in Diamond and Pearl when you're leaving Pastoria. There's another rival fight. I kind of like that positioning a little better. So you fight Barry leaving Pastoria to go back up to Veilstone, or whichever way you're trying to leave to go back up to Veilstone. And then, you know, when you get here, he has a level 36 Skuntank, a Gengar at level 35, and a Toxicroak at level 38. Now, um, He does have Skunting, who is typically on Jupiter's team, but in my head, I'm just kind of headcanon Jupiter as being more of a ghost specialist. I'm kind of thinking that she'll have a Miss Magius. Just because it always kind of bugged me that her Skuntank was way under leveled anyway. It doesn't evolve until I think 34. So considering Miss Magius can evolve at whatever level since it's just a stone evolution, I think that might make a little more sense anyway. But yeah, that frees up Skuntank to be on Saturn's team here. And I have said before that I think it would have been kind of cool for him to have a Gengar anyway in my villain team analysis, like grand analysis video. I said I think it'd be kind of cool if he had a Haunter and then a Gengar when you fight him. So I think it'd be perfectly fine for him to have that on his team here. And the reason why I think it's cool for Saturn specifically to be the gym leader in Veilstone is throughout the story of Platinum, it's kind of hinted multiple times that the Galactic Corporation is like has this major influence around the region. That's kind of why they're able to operate the way they do. And I think it'd be kind of cool to take that one step further and basically have them position a gym leader in the city that their corporate headquarters is in, and that's where Saturn comes in. I just really like the idea. It would kind of make Team Galactic's influence just feel more significant. I don't know if you would like necessarily meet Saturn before this. Maybe you meet Saturn in the little subplot. You don't fight him yet, but you meet him in the little subplot the first time you go to Veilstone. And then when you come back, you realize, oh, he's actually a gym leader. I think that'd be kind of cool. Next, for the sixth gem, we have Dahlia, who was the Battle Arcade Frontier Brain. And I know she doesn't like quite look like she'd be a fairy type, but I don't think fairy necessarily needs to have like a specific look. I was more so just kind of enamored by the fact that she does use a Togekiss in her uh second round fight. So fairy type. We have Mr. Mime at level 40, Clefable at 38, Azumarill at 38, and Togekiss at 42. These are actually all the fairy types that are available in the region. Like I said up front, there were a couple of fairy type regional forms, maybe only one that I could have used with Galarian and Rapidash, but that would overlap with Mr. Mime, and I didn't really want to do that right here. So, because there were four pretty good fairy types, that's the team. And I think Togekiss is a significant step up from where Byron typically is in the sixth gym. I think by the time you get to the sixth gym, you should have four Pokemon anyway. And Byron and Platinum easily could have had four Pokemon. So, considering Togekiss is a significantly more powerful Pokemon than Bastiodon, it only being one level higher, I don't think that's too crazy. Especially since by that point, you know, you I feel like, especially since you have access to Iron Island, which I'm kind of headcanon that you have to do that stuff with Riley before coming here. There's a lot of steel and rock types kind of around that you can get to counter this. So I think this isn't. I think this is an appropriate challenge for this point. Next, seventh gym, we have a psychic gym leader with Lucian as the gym leader. I feel a little bad for Flint. I didn't end up having a fire gym leader. I thought about it, but there really weren't enough fire Pokemon to warrant it. So he's the only Elite Four member left out here. But I do think the other three make for pretty solid gym leaders. Actually, and they're in order from how they are usually with Bugsy being first, Bertha being next, and then much later we have Lucian. So I think that's fun. I originally wanted Lucian to go a little earlier to kind of emphasize Bronzong a little more, but I eventually changed my tune and actually do like this team a little better. So we have Bronzong at 44, Girafarig at 41, Chimecho at 42, who evolves from a Gen 4 Pokemon, so I wanted to be one level higher than Girafarig, and then Gallade at 46. I am keeping his ace the same as it was in Platinum. However, depending on who I emphasized bronzing or Gallade would have been an ace of his anyway. So I just went with the one I like more, and I really like Gallade, as I've said in previous videos. So yeah, Giraffe Rig is here just to have a normal type, so you don't just run through the entire thing with a ghost type Pokemon. And then, like I said, Chimecho evolves from a Gen 4 Pokemon, so even though it is from a Gen 3, I think it still works here, especially since it is the only pure Psychic type on the team. Okay, so next is something that I'm very, very proud of myself for kind of theory crafting here. So I think it would be very cool if kind of throughout the region, you meet Cyrus a couple of times. I don't think in this scenario you actually fight him, but you do kind of meet him and you kind of get the sense that he maybe used to work with Team Galactic or used to even lead Team Galactic, but you kind of realize he kind of realized that, you know, maybe he was the original CEO and they're just kind of not, the company isn't, you know, what he wants it to be anymore. So he decided to leave the company. So I think it'd be kind of cool if he were an actual gym leader. He no longer affiliated with Team Galactic, but he still has a major presence in the region. You can kind of have a thing where every time there's a Team Galactic event, he is around, and if this were a Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee situation where, the original Gen 4 exists, and then this kind of parallel game is happening where Cyrus is around and you're kind of getting bad vibes from him, but it turns out he's actually on your side. He's actually been kind of secretly trying to dismantle Team Galactic, or at least the front facing, like the the evil part of Team Galactic. So he's been with you kind of throughout, kind of in the background, also trying to dismantle their evil side. So after everything on Mount Cornet happens, I'm kind of actually picturing I'm gonna call him Pluto. I don't really know why they changed his name. The little scientist guy that was in Platinum, Charon, I think is the name they gave him in English, but his Japanese name is Pluto. So I'm just gonna call him Pluto since that at least was a planet at the time. So we're just gonna call him Pluto. Um, Pluto, I'm kind of picturing him as more of the like actual leader of Team Galactic now. I just feel like a scientist type character kind of fits that role better anyway. So he was the one that actually unleashed Dialga or Giratina, depending on the story they do. And then afterwards, you get to Sunny Shore City, and Cyrus is an actual gym leader. And I said in my last video that I think that in any future game where the player is basically forced to catch the box legendary, the final gym leader should kind of be balanced around that. So just like in Hoenn, I think they should also cap at 52. So we have Weavile at 50, Drapion at 48, Absol at 47, Spiritomb at 48, and then Honchkrow at 52. This is one of those teams that honestly might be a little too good. This definitely could easily pass as an Elite Four member team. And I considered that, but also, I don't know, I kind of decided not to care too much about that. The player does already have a box legendary, and I think the eighth gym leader should be a significant presence anyway. So I don't mind their team being somewhat reminiscent of what an Elite Four member would be anyway. So yeah, since Cyrus already used three dark types on his platinum team anyway, and he actually already had five Pokemon, I think it makes sense to kind of make this team kind of in that image. I did have Absol instead of Houndoom. I don't know, I just wanted a pure dark type on here, and Drapion and Spiritomb are both from the region, so kind of Houndoom was the only one I really could switch out. I just think Absol just kind of fits his vibe better anyway. And then between Weavile and Honchkrow, I can kind of go either way. I personally prefer Honchkrow being his ace. I like how in Platinum, at least in the first two fights, the Murkrow line was his ace. Within in the Distortion world, it did end up being Weavile. But regardless, I think either one could be the ace, but I'm going with Honchkrow here. Okay. Now, for the rematches. And when I started this series, I was a little wishy-washy about whether or not I wanted to actually do mega evolutions on all of these gym leaders. I definitely wanted it for the first two and then Gen 3 and 6 since the and probably 7 since those regions at least are connected to regions that have mega evolutions somewhere in their decks. Whereas every other region doesn't have a game that really should have mega evolutions, but I decided, yeah, I think it's more fun just to theory craft rematches having mega evolutions. And unlike last time, which I still agree with that decision in Hoenn to kind of de-emphasize the mega slightly and make it just their second strongest while prioritizing emphasizing the actual Gen 3 Pokemon. I am doing this time basically having the Mega Evolution and their ace kind of both be their ace Pokemon on the same level. So, starting off with Palmer, he now has Ambipom at level 62, Purugly at 60, Porygon Z at 61, B-Barrel at 63, and I find it very funny that even though the other three are definitely better Pokemon, his B-Barrel is still kind of his pseudo, like his second strongest. Snorlax at 65, it does evolve from Munchlax, and I think it's kind of a good analog to Regigigas on his like real final team. So I think Snorlax fits him very well, but I'm also okay with it being Snorlax since Mega Lopunny is kind of also his dual ace, and Lopunny is a Gen 4 Pokemon. So I think it's fine if his other ace isn't really a Gen 4 Pokemon, even though it does evolve from one. I could easily hear an argument for Porygon Z being switched out for something like Blissey. I think that could also work well, just being a team of just a bunch of really bulky Pokemon, and then Lopunny and to an extent Ambipom, but mostly Lopunny, just being able to hit super hard. But I think Porygon Z could also work. I am kind of headcanon Pluto, as I'm calling him, Pluto's ace being Porygon Z, but it doesn't have to be. But especially if that were Porygon Z as Pluto's ace, Blissey could easily go here again, since it does evolve from a Gen 4 Pokemon. But either way, I think that works just fine. Next, Aaron. We have Mothim and Wormadam at 62, Heracross at 60, Vespiquen at 63, Yanmega at 65. I think that just makes sense. Yeah, Vespiquen worked very well as a second gem ace, but Yanmega is a definitely a better Pokemon. And then I went with Mega Scizor as his Mega Ace at 65. I could have gone Heracross, but I can kind of go either way. I just for some reason Scizor just kind of in my head worked a little better here, but um I could kind of go either way. I could easily hear an argument for it being Mega Heracross since every version of Aaron has Heracross since it was available in Diamond and Pearl, so he's had one in every iteration of his teams, but something about Scizor for me just kind of works better, but either way would be fine. Next up, Bertha. We have Hippowdon at 62, Gastrodon at 60, Mamoswine at 61, Rhyperior at 63 to as a homage to her actual ace in the base games. Gliscor is 65, and then Mega Garchomp at 65 as well. Yeah, this might actually be the best team in this entire rematch saga here. Um, I know Mega Garchomp is slightly slow, like at least slower than regular Garchomp, but it still hits really hard. It still gets benefit from the sand like Gliscor does. So with sand going, with just, you know, there's just a lot of things this team can do that are just able to hit and just, mess you up in ways that other gyms just can't really do. So yeah, I really like this team. However, um, as kind of a reference to the fact that the Hisui region was old Sinnoh, I think it'd be kind of cool if instead of Rhyperior, she actually had an Ursa Luna. It is now part ground. I didn't put it on the normal team, but I thought it actually worked better here. I could also hear an argument for switching it out for Mamoswine. Either way, I think works. It really just kind of depends on, I'm not really like taking into account what the Elite Four would be, but essentially, if the Elite Four had a, depending on if the Elite Four had an ice or a rock Elite Four member, you switch that one out for Ursaluna. But I think Mamoswine just kind of fills a better niche on this team since its ice typing helps out against grass types, whereas rock ground doesn't really fill a similar niche. And then so I think Ursaluna's being switched in for Rhyperior works a little better for the team composition. So yeah, this team honestly might be even better than the other one. This is just a very, very good team. Next, Argenta. We have a Chatot at 62, Hisuian Braviary at 60. Like I said up top, I am allowing Hisuian evolutions. I think it's only fair if you don't think she should have a Hisuian Braviary, since that is definitely a post-gen Pokemon. At least Ursaluna was an evolution of a Gen 2 Pokemon, so it's a little cleaner, but Braviary is definitely a a later gen Pokemon. You could switch that out for like Crobat or something else, but I something about Bravier just fits her vibe very well. I actually almost made her dual ace, but I decided against that. Rotom Fan at 61. I think we're well past the point where Rotoms being, especially on rematch teams, are weird. In Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, they did allow a couple of Rotoms to be on the rematch team, so I think Rotom Fan being here isn't too crazy. Mantine at 63. Driftbloom at 65 is kind of her dual ace, and I think even though Driftbloom stat wise isn't the best, I think especially since historically the ace of a gym leader, especially in Diamond or Pearl Platinum, will have a citrus berry. Driftbloom with that citrus berry can be pretty deadly with this unburden ability. If they can get a Calm Mind or two up, it can outspeed your entire team and hit with incredibly powerful shadow balls, heat waves, air slashes, whatever, thunderbolt, psychic. Like it can have a lot of different moves at its disposal. So I think Drifblim actually can be a pretty formidable threat. And then Mega Raptor added in the Legends ZA DLC just works super well here, especially considering it's now part fighting. So even though I added Chatot on here, there's actually no type overlap on this team. So I think that's really cool. Next, Saturn, and I'm kind of headcanon this as after everything that happened on Mount Coronet, after he beat Cyrus, he kind of talked some sense into Saturn, and Saturn decided to essentially, take back the corporation and bring it back to its roots, and is now still a corporate sponsored gym leader, but is no longer an actual like Team Galactic member. He is now, he's just a gym leader. I maybe he retired, or I somehow he's able to keep his his gym leader spot while no longer being affiliated with the evil side of Team Galactic. So I removed the galactic emblem on his chest there. So I think that's really cool. So we have Roserade at 62, Sneasler at 60, since it evolves from Hisuian Sneasel. And I just, again, I think it makes sense for him to have at least a Hisuian Pokemon. It does overlap with his other ace, but the only other real option was like Clodsire, I guess. And I don't know, I just felt like Sneasler just kind of fit a little better here. I guess I could have done Crobat also, but maybe there are a couple of other options, but I think Sneasler fits his vibe the best. Tentacruel at 61, Skuntank at 63, Toxicroak still his dual ace at 65, and then now a Mega Gengar at 65. Dahlia, we have Clefable at 62, Granbull at 60, Azumarill at 61, Mr. Mime at 63, Togekiss at 65, and then Mega Altaria at 65. Regular Altaria is a flying dragon type, but when it mega evolves, it becomes fairy dragon. So I think that makes sense to be on a fairy team, especially since far as I can tell, there aren't really any other fairy fairy mega evolutions outside of Mega Clefable, and I have used that one before, and just for variety's sake, I did decide to bring in one that became fairy type. I just think that's a little more interesting. She'll still have Clefable on her team, but I also just think Mega Altaria just to me just kind of fits her vibe very well. Next, Lucian. He now has both Gardevoir and Gallade, but his Gardevoir is a little weaker at 62. Alolan Raichu at 60. I could have done, I actually could have done Braviary here as well, but I could have done Espeon or Alakazam or even a couple other different Pokemon, but just for, type variety, I went with Alolan Raichu. Giraffe at 61, the evolved form of his giraffe that was on his team. Bronzong at 63. Gallade at 65, and then Mega Chimecho, also from the ZA DLC, at 65. At one point, I had both Bronzong and Chimecho both as his aces, and I think it's kind of interesting for him to have two Psychic Steel types as his aces, but I eventually did go with Gallade being the actual ace Pokemon. And then lastly, Cyrus with Drapion at 67. He now has his Houndoom at 65, Spiritomb at 66, Weavile at 68, Honchkrow at 60, and then Mega Absol at 70. I decided to up his levels by 5 to go up to 70. Historically, in previous videos, I did the first through sixth gym leader on the same level. I upped the level slightly for the seventh and then made the eighth even higher. I decided this time just to make them all the first through seven at 65 and then basically be like, oh, you can't fight him at all until you fight all of them first. And so then him being at 70, I think is more than fair. So yeah, I the only other dark types I could have used were um uh Overquill. There might have been one other from the I guess technically two. There might have been one other from like Hisui that I can't think of right now, but just for type variety, I didn't want to overlap with Drapion. So yeah, I went with Houndoom. This does kind of something kind of funny with this team is if you remove Drapion and put in Umbreon, who I think was the only other dark type in the actual Pokedex that I haven't mentioned yet. If you remove Drapion and put in Umbreon, this team would then be actually identical to Karen's rematch team in Heart Gold Soul Silver. That just kind of comes down to the fact that outside of Tyranitar, who she just refuses to use, there really weren't any other dark type Pokemon available. So, that obviously wouldn't change within generations. So, it is just kind of funny how five of the Pokemon are the same that are on her rematch team, but I don't really care. Most of these are Sinnoh Pokemon, so it makes sense for them to be on Sinnoh teams. It just also so happens that two of them are evolved forms of Gen 2 Pokemon, and then, I guess, she didn't want to use Sableye, so she used Spiritomb. So it just kind of happened. I find that very funny. Um, like I guess I could have switched out Houndoom for Overquill or Sableye or someone else to not have such overlap, but I decided not to really care about that. I think this team overall is just a very, very good eighth gym rematch team. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down below what you thought about any of these teams here. Are there any Pokemon I completely forgot about? Is there any ordering that you disagree with? You think I should have gone up levels even more? Yeah, let me know down below. I've been having great discussions with people in the comments on these previous videos. They've actually been giving me a lot of good ideas for future teams in this series. So, please continue to leave thoughts and suggestions and just general comments about anything about this video or future videos. I really appreciate it. And with that, I will see you all next time.